Left of the box. So this weekend, there was a assassination attempt on Donald Trump yesterday, and it's been all over the news. You see, when I was planning on doing this live stream Friday, I was just going to vent about Biden, you know, how he's not stepping down yet. But then all this happened with Trump, and it's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I was on the Letter Hack briefly last night. Everyone go check out his channel as well. And we were talking a bit about this, and this was before we knew a lot of the stuff. So when I first kind of caught the clips, I didn't really know much about it. I'm not the type of person to assume it's a false flag or assume anything about it. It's just like, okay, so we got some clips, we don't really know anything, which is why I don't generally like covering these things live, because I want to wait till some information is out so that we know some things. And turns out it wasn't a false flag, because I couldn't help but think the way that they reacted and everything, it had a very WWE feel vibe to it, you know? Because Donald Trump was well connected with the WWE at one point, and something that they would actually do in the WWE to make things more dramatic is, let's say they got hit over the head with a folding chair or something like that. They had a razor kind of palmed, and they would give themselves a little nick, so then you'd see the blood, even though the chair itself didn't cause that blood. And the way that he kind of went down and held his ear, it almost looked like that. But there was an actual shooter, and as soon as I knew there was an actual shooter, okay, it's not a false flag, because to hit him that close intentionally is impossible. It's impossible. I don't care what kind of sharpshooter you are, to hit somebody's ear at a distance intentionally instead of in their head. Yeah, so actual shooter, it's not a false flag, and tragically somebody did die, somebody in the audience, and somebody else was severely wounded from what I hear. But the thing is that Donald Trump still has that WWE vibe going. And I think this is why a lot of people are assuming it's a false flag or assuming it's not real, because of how Trump reacted to it. Suddenly, like fist pumping, all these amazing pictures and things of that sort. Donald Trump is horrible in a lot of ways, and he's not the brightest person in a lot of ways. But when it comes to self-promotion and media, he's a freaking genius. That's basically how he became president, was through that kind of self-promotion and knowing what works in media. His reaction to that, because if you've watched the video, and I'm sure most of you have, but if you actually listen to it, they quickly say the shooter's down. So he knows as long as there's just one shooter, he's safe. And then he does the fist pumping and stuff like that because he knows more or less he's safe. But the way he reacted to it is how somebody in the WWE would just kind of take that opportunity and react to it all like that. It is a flare of the dramatic. And it was a good call on his part. You know, it got him the pictures that he wants, the talk of the town, showing strength, getting the audience to chant, all that sort of stuff. But that was definitely a WWE tactic going on that he was pulling off there. So we're going to be facing an uphill battle now with a lot of other people claiming it's false flag, claiming conspiracies. But really, is it that difficult to believe in this day and age that somebody would attempt to take out any political person? Like, the atmosphere is just so hostile right now. It doesn't matter where you land on the spectrum of politics. It's a hostile environment to be in. So is it really that surprising that he was a target? To me, it's actually more surprising it wasn't somebody on the left who was a target, because we're now going to be faced with a lot of people saying, even though the person who was the shooter was determined to be a Republican, a white man at the age of 20, the right will still kind of try to make it about the left being horrible, the media being horrible, and all this sort of stuff, while completely not mentioning anything about how horrible they've been. Like Trump literally said he could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Ave. Way back when he had a full page ad put into a newspaper saying he wanted 5 innocent black men executed. The right, by far, is the more extremist, violent. Studies back that up. Looking at motivations behind these types of attacks back it up. Looking at rise in hate attacks and all that sort of stuff. It is predominantly people on the right, and if you watch them in the media, their political figures, their influencers, all that sort of stuff, you're constantly seeing stochastic terror, which, the right is now accusing the media of doing towards Donald Trump, which is just absurd. I've seen religious leaders flat out call for the execution of queer folks with no pushback. There's tons of media influencers, right wing influencers, that are constantly hinting at how dangerous it is, hinting at, queer folks in particular being a threat. They're going to harm your children, all that sort of stuff. Even recently here in Canada, there was that truck going around Toronto, an LED truck with blaring things saying, this is Canada, showing images of Muslim prayer and basically saying, they're coming for you. You're under siege. What are you going to do? Basically, that's stochastic terrorism right there. And we're constantly seeing it. And it's just so frustrating because this will almost give a license to some of them to act out. It emboldens them when it's one of theirs who is the target. And they will use this moment. They will prop it up. They'll keep on talking about it. They'll keep on referring to it, despite all of the other ones coming from right wing, even though the shooter was Republican. But that's not how they're going to frame it. And I'm going to show you a bit already as to what they're doing to frame this. It's pretty sad. But all this does is embolden his base, gets people more revved up, gets them more trigger happy when it comes to defending themselves or other people. And all this talk of political violence because he got sniped in the ear and you saw his bloody ear. Well, to be fair, listening to Trump regularly makes my ears bleed. But they never mention the violence and the brutality that the police inflict on innocent people, on peaceful protesters. The bombing campaigns that are happening in Gaza right now, which is all political. That's not mentioned. But because he was targeted, suddenly, political violence, huh? That's a thing, isn't it? Huh? Yeah. And here in Canada, we have a long history of political violence, especially towards Indigenous peoples. They've had blockades and stuff before with snipers homed in on them. Even, recently at some of the university encampments, you had police spying on them, singling them out. And then here's Donald Trump being a target, and all it's going to do is justify their actions to themselves. And this makes it even more dangerous, and it makes him look good. I don't support political violence. Do I want Trump out of the race? Of course I do. But I don't want people to think it's okay, this is how you do it. Because, again, it's not the right, it's not the Republicans, it's not the conservatives that are going to suffer the most if people start getting permissive with this. It's going to be people on the left. Also, I don't like people being shot and assassinated. That's bad. I know, hot take there. It is, it's an attack on him, but we're going to feel the consequences on the left, which is just, and it didn't matter who did it really. It would have been a lot worse had it been some sort of Antifa, radical leftist, queer person who did it. Then the lashing out would be a lot worse. But they're still going to use it and use it as justification, just like they do with all the other incidences of the right wing being targeted. It's like, oh, they point to that one time, without again mentioning all the other times the right has been targeting people on the left. And just some of the grossest hypocrisy is out there right now with a lot of these Republicans saying, oh, this violence is uncalled for, political violence is always wrong, and blah, 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 blah. And there's tons of threads. And you're a bright audience, people in the sandbox, I'm sure you know the amount of times the right has called for violence. Like, even just look at January 6th, the riot, people died there. Trump was the one who kind of stoked that fire. But now he's the victim. Oh no. So, and this will have fallout here in Canada, of course, because all it will do is embolden our conservative leaders, embolden the hatred that's happening up here, because there is a lot of hatred happening up here, always has been. And I have some interesting comments from some of the leaders, how they responded, and then I'm going to talk a lot about Pierre Poilievre and how he's starting to really take on this United States right-wing fanaticism as a cloak.